want to like to learn how to do an inventory, and tonight it's usually a 4 or 5 week thing every month, but it doesn't really have any rhythm to it. Tonight's going to be like the review of it all, which is just basically we're going to look at the principles of self and the solution of surrender to a higher power. And then we'll go over, there's 3 major inventories that we do in AA as the first introduction inventory to the program, and that is we do a resentment and a fear and a harms done to others. And the harms done to others, we look at sex. And the reason why we do it, one of the main reasons, is to see how self-will has cut us off from the influence of the spirit, so to speak, and to become convinced of that. Because what is needed, the convincing is important, because what happens is, if you are convinced that self has defeated you, or what we call the ego now, back then they called it the self, it's so clear what he says in the book. He says, being convinced that self has defeated us, we're going to look at its common manifestations, or its creation, right? So self's creation in your life are fears, resentments, and harming other people. So the self causes those things to appear as much as they do in your life. And so by trying to deal with the resentment, fears, and the harms done to others without dealing with the self is sort of like you're just dealing with the effects, you're not getting to the cause. If you don't deal with the cause is going to create more effects. So you're going to have more resentment, more fears, and more harms done to others. Many people in AA, you see, they've been in AA for a long time, but they haven't commenced to outgrow fear yet, right? But they put down the drink and the drug a long time ago. Why is that? Because the drink and the drug isn't the root problem. The root problem is your obsession with who you think you are. And that who you think you are, you didn't do all the building of it. You've been conditioned and programmed. You picked up a lot of ideas by interpreting what people were doing to you or around you, and you made up a lot of things in your head that have become this image that you call Eileen or Paul or something like that. That image is exactly that. It's an image. It's not what you really are. It's an image of what you think you are, right? It's almost like your representative out here. And what happens is it's almost like it had a purpose, and it still does, but the purpose has been distorted because the servant has actually become the master in a way. So now you're living for your ego instead of it living for you. And you basically, and how it does that, how it actually defeats us, is that we identify with it as us. That's its true defeat of us, is we actually think we're it. We actually think that the most important thing in our world is probably based in the past or the future, but not now. The most important thing in the world is our body, let's say, and yet that body's going to get old and probably get sick and die. I hate to break that news to you, but it's going to. Or we think it's our image or how people view us, and we have no control over that. We'll work out, we'll dress well, we'll do this, we'll be a people pleaser, with the hopes that our image is basically gets its shine from the approval of others, right? All of these ideas about ourselves are conditional. They're all based on circumstances or how we're interpreting them, and they're always open to change. So there's really no serenity there. How can there be? If your happiness is based on your spouse liking you, that could change any day. And you think it will change if you don't do certain things. So basically you'll do those things even if you like them or not, in the hopes of it will keep them happy with you, so that you'll be getting your acknowledgement from them, which makes you feel like you're okay. Now that is a real tenuous job to have, while all the other jobs you have. You know, to keep all that control and mustering up all those, figuring out what's going to make him or her happy, or the boss, blah, 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 is a lot of work, I would say. Eh? And it doesn't decrease as time goes by, it actually increases. You need to do more and more and more and more and more, you know? And so you see that you start living for something instead of being something you already are. And I think Bill W. was very clear about it in the book, he says simply that self is what has defeated us, that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Now, what does the self, when does the will of self, or what does the will of self work towards? It works towards promoting and furthering itself. Its agenda. Not yours, its agenda. Because actually, as a being, I would imagine we pretty much have the same agenda as a being. And that's to be happy, joyous, free, maybe at peace, connected. And yet the ego in all of us, the image in all of us, hasn't done a good job in procuring that stuff, has it? Are you happy, joyous, and free quite a lot of the day? I hope so, but usually the case is most people aren't. Why is that? They have a great image, they got a great car, they got all the nice clothes, they got every guy or every woman agreeing that they're okay, then why are they insane inside themselves? Is it serving them really? Is it serving them? It's serving something for sure. But you need to identify what that something is. Is it you? Or is it something else? Is it you? If it's you, and you see and you think it's going to work out, and you're willing to follow the Stalinist 5-year plan it offers you, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one will offer you, then go right ahead. But if you start questioning it, and you start seeing that, every time I've ever felt happy, where did I feel happy? It was inside. When did I feel happy? Now. You're getting closer to the truth, right? It's sort of inside, and it's now. The ego or the image is not really that concerned with inside and now. It's concerned with how my outside looks, and I hope it's going to look good tomorrow. And I hope it doesn't look as bad as I thought it did a year ago. Because I'm hoping it's going to procure what I really think is going to make me happy. But obviously it hasn't done so now because you don't have it, right? If your pursuit of happiness is a run, that means you don't have happiness. You're still looking for it. You're still putting it off as an object, and you're spacing it out through time. I've got to do all this stuff to get happy. Guess what? Millions and millions of people have followed the same equation that you are, and none of them have gotten happy. No lasting happiness. Why would you want to continue to keep doing what everyone else has done and hope that different results occur? I mean, have you ever sat down with a lot of people for over 5 or 10 minutes? How many people, if you sit down with 10 minutes with them, are they happy, joyous, and free? Very few that I've talked with. Very few that I've hung out with. And it doesn't matter if they have a wad of money in their pocket or they don't have anything in their pocket. They got a bologna sandwich in their back pocket. The fact is, if they're obsessed with their self, they're missing the whole point. It cannot be wrestled in a time. Happiness is not like a timeshare thing. It's not what it is. So the ego or the image, if we're identified as it and it's running the show, it's basically running what it thinks it's show, right? And you're along for as transportation, basically. And you don't get what you want. You just don't. And sooner or later, the being in you or and other aspects of you start getting really pissed off. Start getting really unhappy, irritable, and discontent because they want something. And the ego cannot find it where it shops. See? It'll keep thinking it's in aisle 12, but there's no aisle 12 in the store it goes to. It's sort of like going to a hardware store looking for a book. You look all over the hardware store for that book, there's no book, So you leave that hardware store and you go to a next hardware store and look for the book. You just don't get that there's no book in a hardware store. It's very important to realize if you've been trying to get happiness out of something that's not producing it, when are you going to stop? When are you going to give up? When are you going to have enough? It could be right now if you want. And that's the surrender to me. I mean, sometimes I get a little maudlin about it, but when I look back on my little life, I cannot believe how intolerably hellish it's been for people I know and for myself. My family, other people, people I've lived with. I've seen so much unhappiness go on. It's incredible. as almost like a daily meal every day, a staple of unhappiness, constantly being eaten and eaten and eaten, to a point where the spirit is so covered that everyone's just living for like scraps, basically. They don't feel connected, they don't feel intimate, they don't feel love, they don't feel serenity, and to me that's actually intolerable, not to have those things in your life. I won't put up with it anymore. It's just enough, enough's enough. So what's one to do? Well, for me, AA offered me a solution, and my drinking and my drug use offered me a real good picture of the problem. I really saw that self had defeated me, clearly. I saw that my life and the perception I had was totally based on fear. Fear was the thing is, we're perceptual machines. You and I give everything all the meaning it has for us. It's a very important statement. You and I give all the meaning everything has for us. That's what we do. You have a little dictionary in your head. I have a dictionary in my head. And we have defined everything, mostly through our conditioning and programming, really, right? But there's definitions for everything there, and they mean something to us every day. Now, the thing that's actually giving all the meaning to everything is where we're looking at life from. And there's two alternatives. When I was looking at life from most of my life, I only thought that was the only alternative. I didn't think there was another alternative. That one was an egoic mind, right? A self-centered thinking apparatus that had created an image that was totally fear-based and was very, very afraid of what the future was going to bring. And so with that sort of forecast, it wanted to escape all the time. And it drank and it did drugs and it did all these things to do just that. Even after it didn't work, it couldn't stop because it was so afraid of stopping, to seeing what life had in store for it. It'd rather beat the living hell out of itself than let life do it, in a sense, Now, how did that happen? My ego, even since I was a little kid, its obsession or fixation of itself was that something was wrong with me. Something was off. Like even to this day, I go to a security, I go to the department store, I go right up to the security guard and tell them I'm not going to take anything, right? I got this attitude that people are watching me all the time, that I've done something wrong, It's one of the foundations of the alcoholic mind I've discovered in my head. Now, so when I looked at life from this place that I was wrong. So anything that happened around me in my life, let's say when my father died, when I was 11 years old, somehow or another, my mind took that and made itself wrong with that. That some reason I had something to do with this. I know it, right? When my grandmother died, the same thing. I must have had something to do with this. The egocentricity, right? Feeling this wrongness, interpreted everything as it had to do with me. So when something went sort of bad in the family, I must have been the cause of it somehow. That conditioning just created more and more fear. Right? More and more fear. So my perceptual apparatus, my mind, with an ego sitting on it, with this obsession with self on the negative side, giving everything that it saw, all the meaning it had, the world started getting to be a real scary place for this kid, right? People got scary. I got scary, right? I wanted out so bad. I'm also alcoholically conditioned that I needed a drink by the time I was 13. I needed one when I was 11, but I found it when I was 13. Right? Now, that didn't take away the fear perception. Right? It actually fortified it and reinforced it. And so what happened was, to me, that sense of impending doom a lot of alcoholics have got larger and larger and larger and larger. And I also felt in my life that when my father died and other people died, the feelings I had were so scary to me, I decided in my head that I'm going to make myself feel everything. before you do. So if I drank and used every day, I created my own feeling. So you couldn't make me feel anything. I already had a feeling going on, right? That was my egoic solution to the world it made. Obviously, it didn't work, right? So I come into AA, and what I find is I actually believe on my past. I think I did all these bad things. I did all this. I said no to love all this time. And a huge conviction or a huge belief about this image was solidly in place. So every day when I got up, I started at about -10. And if I had a good day, I'd get near 0. You know, a bad day, I'd be going like -15. But basically, my ceiling of success was very, very meager. You know, very, you know, I wasn't really looking for much because I didn't think I had much coming. You know, I just wanted to survive. And so that's what happened. This thing that I was as a being got supplanted or covered up with this image that needed to survive. And basically, I lived on a bottom, even when I got sober, because there was no love there. When someone introduced love to me, I couldn't handle it. It was almost like poison to my ego, which is actually the fruit of all fruit to my heart, became poison with my ego living my life for me. It would do almost anything not to be in an intimate situation, to tell you the truth, because that was the scariest place for it. Now, to me, all this stuff shows the ass backwardness of this thing called this ego, called Paul, right? I got into AA, and I had the results of all those years of Paul living and fortifying and reinforcing his little belief system. And I'm not calling Paul me, I'm calling it my alcoholism. And you know what? Basically, there was not much left. I wasn't even close to being a human anymore. It had done an incredible job. So I woke up and I realized, man, I've got to surrender or this thing's going to kill me. Or worse yet, it's going to keep making me live like this, you know? I've got to surrender this sense of self over to the care of something greater than myself. In fact, first what I did is I turned my will, my life, and all my little goals and this and that. But that led me to believe that I could actually surrender the self, not just my will and my life, because I don't want my life, my ego to take a surrendered life, right? And a surrendered will, because it will produce the same results with a surrendered life. You get into AA and people are still freaking unhappy. They've been given a chance, right, to really surrender and totally live on a different basis, but all they do is make their prison cell a little more comfortable. You know, maybe instead of 8 by 11, it's now 10 by 13, and there's not the huge hassle of all the circumstances of drinking and drugs, but still, where's the happiness and joy and freedom? It's not coming in, and it's not going out. There's something wrong there, because what they're doing is, this is my observation, I could be off, but there's practicing program from a sense of self. So the self is now taking the results of the program, and it's still giving the basic meaning it's always given to itself, which is a meaning that will defeat you. So it'll basically use the program to defeat you. You'll be a sober alcoholic, but you won't be happy, joyous, and free. You know? So what, in a sense? Yeah, it's a lot better, but you know what? So's when you take your hand out of a fire, you feel a lot better. But that doesn't mean that's success, that your hand's not in the fire anymore. Do you know what I mean? We're so used to being in hell, you get the purgatory, you think it's pretty good. You know, you're like, yeah, this is really cool. The heat's gone down, I can chill out. But in fact, why stop there? There's heaven. There's heaven, you know? But heaven's not going to be reached by any self. Heaven comes from a surrender, in a sense. Because the reason why we're not in heaven, or even a degree of it, is because you're in self. Self excludes you from heaven. It's that freaking simple. You can't go into heaven with self. It's like that story I like to tell. There's Paul, and Paul does all these things. Let's say he follows a spiritual teacher and he meditates and he works, does all this stuff, and then he thinks he's ready to go to heaven, right? So he goes up to the heaven's door and he knocks on it. He goes, God answers it, and then Paul says, "Can I come in?" And God says, "Listen, Paul, can't come in." So I walk back dejectedly, and I practice even harder. I meditate even more, and I work out, and I get the whites and the incense, and I got pictures of Buddha and everything like that, and I got a very, whatever it is, all those images of being something. And then I go back to the door. God answers it, and I say, "Can I come in?" God says, "Paul can't come in." So I'm totally bummed out now. I'm actually angry at him, because I figured I did everything I was supposed to do to get into heaven, and I'm not in heaven, so I'm pissed at God. So I go back, I even work harder at it, right? I lift spiritual weights, I do whatever I'm supposed to do, right? Then I go to heaven, and I knock on the door, and I go, God answers it, and he goes, "Paul can't come in." And at that moment, I get it. I surrender, and I walk right in. And he just lets me go by. Because at that moment, I realized I wasn't Paul. And Paul was never going to be able to go in. No matter what Paul does, Paul's not going in. That image is not going in. I could have walked in that first time I knocked on the door. I could have realized I was in heaven without even knocking on a door. Because in fact, but there was a sense of Paul there. I was identified as something that precludes me from being there. That's as simple as it is, really. And to me, AA and whatever else you may find out there, if it helps you get out of yourself, it's probably a damn good thing to do. Because getting out of yourself, you see that you thrive pretty good out there without that image being on top of you, When something or other sort of shifts it and sort of gives you a little breathing room, what breathes is pretty damn good. You feel better, You feel freer. You feel more in the moment. You feel a little joy when you see a person that you've talked to still stay sober, Getting out of yourself works. Why? Because the problem is self. That's why it works. If you don't know the problem, you can tell by the solution. If you do things to get out of yourself and you feel better, guess what? The problem is being in self. That's it, right? You've discovered it by taking the medicine. You may not know the disease you have, but if the medicine is meant to cure cancer and you get cured, you got cancer. You had cancer, right? So if you do things that take you out of yourself and you feel better, you're obsessed with self. That's the way it's worked. You've gotten out of the thing that's killing you. See? The self wants you to do everything. The self wants you to get spiritual and go on a spiritual journey with the intention of finding peace, and it has no real intention of ever finding peace. It just wants you to have another image. You know what I mean? Now you'll be a spiritual person. It doesn't matter really, you're still bonded to self. The only thing you can get out of spiritual practice is different states of mind, unless there's surrender. And definitely a nice state of mind which is peaceful is nice, but if it's conditioned that you have to meditate 5 hours a day to do it, what happens when you don't meditate 5 hours a day? That state of mind doesn't come about. So it's all conditional. Again, that's not freedom. What you are doesn't need to be found or like acquired. It's already there. You just need to take what's distracting you off it, Peel off, allow all those things to be peeled off, and what you're going to be left with is that thing that you are. And that thing that you are, you don't have to identify with it because you're already it, right? You have to identify with an image because you're not it. So you identify with the way you look or the way other people think of you looking, whatever it is, but you got your identifications. When you find out what you are, there's no need to identify because you're it. I don't have to identify as a person 6'1". I am 6'1". I don't have to identify as a man. I am a man, in a way. I hopefully. I think so. You know what I mean? You don't need to identify with what you are. You've identified with what you're not, and now you think you're it. And that thinking you're it is the reason why you suffer so much, to tell you the truth.
Once you get out of yourself, you'll see that suffering diminishes unbelievably. And it doesn't mean all your problems disappear. You just won't see them as problems. When you go back into self, you'll see them as problems. When you get out of self, you won't see them as problems. What are they? You're giving them all the meaning they have for you. The facts of your life haven't changed one bit, but your interpretation of them can change dramatically from where you're looking at them from. That's the key. The steps and all the activity in AA are to have that shift occur, or like Bill W. says in the fear inventory, to allow you to have that different basis of living, a basis of trusting something infinite rather than your finite self. That's a way of life, right? That's when you trust something infinite, you start living from your being. When you're trusting your finite self, you're living from the doership of yourself. You think you're going to have to do a lot of things. And that doing is all important. And you lose your beingness there. When you're being, you're doing. You're going to do. You're interactive with life. But when you're doing, you lose your beingness. You can lose it in the shuffle. And that's why you feel so shitty at times, to tell you the truth. You know, a lot of things in my life don't go well. And a lot of times they do go well. But the opportunity for me to feel at peace has nothing to do with how they're going. They don't. It has nothing to do with it. I've had it proven here so dramatically. I've been doing these workshops over 10 years now. 11 years, I think, in San Francisco. It seems like 11 years here, but it's a couple months. 11 years. Now, usually it was Monday nights. I have walked into that meeting coming out of any type of situation you can imagine. Breaking up with Mrs. Wright, that like 15 minutes before, having been told I have this nasty disease, like that day, whatever it was. And I've sat in that room, and for that hour, that anything has been removed. It's all gone for that hour. I'm at peace, joy, I can feel the flow of this presence. Now maybe, as soon as I stop the meeting at 8, 9:15, 9:16, I feel shitty again. But for that hour, I'm removed from it. Why? Why has that happened? And why has the batting average been like 1,000? And that's a long period of time, I'd say. It's a lot of Mondays. 10 years, it's a lot. It's about, I don't know, how many, 600 or something? 600 times. Now, when I was drinking and using, I went out to have fun, let's say 600 times. My batting average was about maybe 45. Maybe I had fun 45, and that didn't last long. And the rest of the 555 times, shit hit the fan. But this is 600 times I've come in here, and it's worked every time. That's a different basis of living, isn't it? You're going to live, if you surrender and you constantly practice it, you'll live on a different basis. That basis is, and the basis is that you're going to feel the juice. The goods will be delivered. You don't have to have a huge advertising campaign that's going to get better. It is going to get better, right? You're not going to have to listen to a huge advertising campaign how you're going to be happy when you meet so-and-so, or you get out of college, or you move, or you get that dog. You'll have happiness now. It will produce it now. The ego basically doesn't bring, it's just an advertising campaign. Thousands and thousands of thoughts, thousands and thousands of projections of why you don't have what you really want to have now, right? It's because of you, some reason. You're the reason why you don't have it. You're the reason why that guy left. You're the reason why you didn't get the job. You're the reason why, blah, blah, blah. Constantly, it just covers its tracks perfectly because it puts it on you all the time that you're the reason why it hasn't worked. No, it's the reason why it hasn't worked. Living an egoic-centered life, you will not be happy, joyous, and free. And I can safely say that because most of us have, and it hasn't produced it yet. So, you can sit here, there must be 300 years of self-will. 300 years of self-will here. Jesus. I mean, how many hours of happiness, joy, and freedom do we have in all, if we combine all our 300 years together? maybe get enough for a phone call. You know what I mean? Probably collect. We don't have enough change. We don't have it. Why would you want that to keep managing your life? Why? That's a good question. Why do you want to live? Do you know every time the only place you can have, the only time you're ever in the future is right now? The only time you're in it. The only time you're ever in the future is right now. You're sitting here right now, I'm sitting here right now, and that's all you can do is think about a future. And you're thinking of it now, right? Or you think about the past and you're thinking of it now. But why not just be present now? Instead of thinking of the past and future, be present now. It's right there. It's so loud, it's deafening. If you can tune yourself through doing this program, it will tune you out of that frequency that you hear all the time, that boredom that looks exciting, but it's truly boredom. It's just the same loop. It's like Groundhog's Day every day, really. You have to admit it. You just have different cameo appearances, but basically, it looks like it's the same old, all the freaking time. And if a truck doesn't hit you, you feel like it worked out. Jeez, I didn't get killed today. You succeeded. You did a good job up there. Man, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And then some people wake up, and some people don't. Some people will wake up on their deathbed. That's when they finally wake up. Why put it off till then? They do. They wake up, they realize their whole life was meaningless in a sense. And, the love that they're feeling and the connection they're feeling right now, I wish I would have felt it all those years ago. Why would you want to wait till then to do that? Do it now. The reason why they didn't feel it, because they were in a machine, they were identified as an ego that was in the past and future all the time. Until the moment of death, they ain't got no future. Then it wakes up. It can't be dawdling in its little time factory. It's brought into the moment, and it goes, oh, I blew it. You know what I mean? I've been doing all these plans, and now there's no time for plan. There's no planning. I'm going, right? Why not die today to that thing? Like St. Francis says in his prayer in the 12 by 12, it says, we have to die to ourself to be reborn. What do you think he's talking about? You have to die to your ego to be reborn. Doesn't mean you have to die. You have to die to your ego. You got to let that thing die. You got to stop giving it mouth-to-mouth resuscitation all day. You have to cut off its life support, basically, because you're its juice. And if you could, when you do that, you'll drop into your being. You'll drop into a thing. It's not a thing. It's not an object. It's just a something. It's what you are. There's a presence there. You can feel it in certain times at meetings. You can feel it on a beautiful day when you look at the sun or see the ducks flying by. You can feel it. You'll just get an unbridled joy will just come up in your body at times. That's it. Those are free samples. God's trying to, catch your attention. Come out of the future and the past and be present now. This is it. It's here. It's on offer. Right this moment. It's on offer. Why do you want to why do you want to obsess over the menu instead of eating the food you need? You know what I mean? Why? Why would you want to keep doing that? And all the while you're starving. So to me, the inventories, we do the inventories, the three of them. The main objective to me is to open yourself to the sunlight of the Spirit. And it doesn't have to have any connotation that it's a God or not, because it's right in you. It's right there. That presence is right there in you. The awareness, like St. Francis also says, what's looking is what you're looking for. The thing that's looking through your eyes before you put a name on it, which is Eileen or Paul, That pure awareness is what you are. It's going to stream out of you. If you had amnesia right now and you had no sense that you were Katie or Paul, awareness would still be coming out of your eyes. And you'd still have feelings and thoughts because you're a sentient mechanism. You're in a body. It has nothing to do with you. See, the ego gets involved and creates a story about it all, Now, I got run over by a car 22 years ago. Now, that actually happened. I got run over by the car. I have the scars to show. But I can see how my ego has made a story about it. And unbelievable. And also, whatever story the ego makes, it uses it for a purpose, and that is to defeat you in some way. So maybe my being hit by a car will lead me into self-pity. If the self-pity gets enough, I'll probably drink over it. That's how ego defeats you. The fact is, you already have a story. You don't have to rewrite another one or keep writing a new one, right? The basic thing really is to surrender being the author of it. Let God author it, because He already is. He's authoring your story. You just don't know it. You just don't know it. You think you have to rewrite it and, send it back to the editor and get some, get a different theme or make it a serial, which is what we do, actually. We just want to, and we think everyone's going to be super amused by it, but they're boring as hell, really. They are. It's incredible. When you sit here, that's the only reason why I talk about this, because I've had samples of it myself, and I've seen other people who I know are awake, and it's a beautiful thing to see a human being who woke up. It's just beautiful. You want to hang out with those people because they got what you really want, because they got the moment. And they don't have it, because you don't have to own the moment. It's already freely given. So they're relaxed and having it, you know what I mean? They're not like someone who has a lot of money. They're very rarely relaxed because they think everyone's trying to get it or something, right? It's hard to be relaxed with having something here. If you have a beautiful girlfriend, you don't want to even bring her outside because you can't feel relaxed because you think every guy's going to hit on her. And then your low self-esteem comes up and you think that she'd rather go with anyone else but you. You know what I mean? So there's no way you can even enjoy this beautiful woman as you'd like, because having her is the problem. The possessing of her, the desire to possess her, causes all the problems. But when you're in this moment, there's no having it. You don't own it, right? It's just freely given, and you're in it. Shit. It's just another way of living. See, the pursuit of happiness will change if you're already happy. The whole race will change. See? The whole race for security will change if you're already secure. Right? The whole race for joy will change if you already have joy. Life will change totally if you have what you were thinking of getting in life. If you already have it. Right? You're going to have a huge readjustment, because you'll see that maybe I don't want to spend 20 years trying to get this thing. Because I was trying to get it because I wanted it, I thought it would make me happy, but I'm already happy. It opens up the whole, you know what I mean? The horizon opens up. You can do almost anything then, because you're sort of free. You're not locked in thinking, if I do this, I'll get that, and I want that, so I'll do all this stuff. What happens if you already had the essence of that you wanted? You'd still have your dreams and your goals, but you'd wear them a lot looser than you do now, because they wouldn't mean so much to you, right? They wouldn't mean so much to you, because what would be giving them the meaning would be the higher power, and you've already gotten the meaning of it. You've got the joy, What do you think a good-looking woman is to a guy half the time? It's what it signifies to the guy. It's not the person themselves. It's the signification. A good-looking woman signifies I'm okay. I want to feel okay, I got to get that good-looking woman. So I will put up with tons of shit to get it. You know what I mean? I'm telling you the truth. I remember, you go to a dinner, and let's say this lady's very attractive to you. You'll listen so attentively to her talk about her job and da-da-da for 5 hours, 6 hours, with the hopes that she'll do something that will signify that she likes you. Let's say that signification is going to sleep with you. So that night she makes a mistake and goes to sleep with you, right? So you got what you wanted already. Your ego's got it. I'm feeling cool now. You go to dinner with her again the next night, she's talking about her job and her cat, you're out of there. Why? What happened to the love? There wasn't love there. It was what she signified. I already got it. So I'm not paying this cost anymore. I'm not going to listen to her for 6 hours to get what I'm looking for. So let's speed it up. Let's go, That's ego. That's what it does. Now it can clothe it into this beautiful dramatic thing, but basically it's looking for what it wants, what it signifies to it that it's going to be okay. What would happen if you're already okay? What would happen then? What would happen to the thing that chooses all these people in your life? The thing that chooses them would be changed, and maybe you choose a person that would be more suitable to you than just an image. Who knows? Maybe not. But you'd be free either way, because you'd already have what you thought you needed that person to bring into your life. You'd already have it, So let's say if you already have it and you're in an intolerable situation, you know what? You'll recognize it as intolerable and you'll do something about it. If you don't have what you want and you're thinking that thing is going to bring it to you, even though it's not bringing it to you now, and it's intolerable, you will not leave that intolerability, because you can't, the stronger intolerability is not having what you think that person's bringing you. And so you'll stay in an incredibly inappropriate relationship because you are in fear of not having what you want. Even though what you're getting is unbelievably nasty, you'll still put up with it with the hopes that you'll finally get it. She'll finally turn the corner. She'll finally, it's totally crazy. What makes you do all that stuff is where you're looking at life from. It's as simple as that. If where you're looking at your life from makes you act like an asshole, by trying to become different than an asshole, by not changing this, you're not going to do it. You're going to constantly, assholism is going to sneak out. Because what's producing you being an asshole hasn't been affected at all, But if you change this, then you'll see that, man, after a while you're not acting like an asshole anymore. Why? Because this thing has changed. See, the real results it's sort of like molting a skin. It just falls off you when you recognize the truth. You don't have to discipline yourself to get better, because you will just be better. This thing is it. Wherever you're looking at life is giving it all the meaning you have. If you don't like the meaning life has for you, change where you're looking at it from. That's all you need to start doing. And to make it really practical, AA offers you a perfect 12-step program, and with all the other activities to get you out of yourself for that to happen. It may be a long process, it may be a short process, but what else you got to do? You know what I mean? You got your dreams, you got your hopes, you got your jobs. Continue to do them, but with this as the pursuit underneath it all, you will be rewarded unbelievably greatly. Because you'll get freedom. So fear is awesome, because I find that everyone has it all the time, it seems like, And it says here very beautifully in the book, Bill W. says, fear set off trains of circumstances, right, making decisions out of it. This is really a skeletal description of your downward spiral into your bottom. Right? Before we put all the personal cameos and, the geography situations, this is really basically the skeletal dynamic. You and I made decisions out of fear that set off trains of circumstances that brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve, which usually meant we got resentful at something, right? We started blaming things for the condition where we find ourselves in. And that blaming, conditioned our next decision to become out of fear again, more trains of circumstances, more misfortune, more reactions of bitterness and resentment, more decisions out of fear, more trains of circumstances, more misfortune, and therefore you're on the bottom, right? You didn't enter a bottom in a day. It was a process, right? But you ended up in one. I'll tell you, that's a very good description of the process. Without your personal story on it, that's it. You were looking at life from a place of fear. You made your decisions from that perception. It set off trains of circumstances, reactions out here that brought you misfortune that you felt you didn't deserve. I'll give you a great example of my own experience with this. I remember when at the last year or so I was out there, I had a court date. And to me, the court meant I may go to jail. That's what it meant to me, right, for my ego. Now, I didn't know if it was a jailable offense or not, but my mind said, if you go to court, they may send you to jail. You don't want to go to jail, so you're in a dilemma. So my counselor up here, my little ego said, okay, Paul, my solution is don't go to court. I said, that sounds pretty damn good, forgetting all the other times it's told me things. I said, this sounds like a good one, So the day I had to go to court came. I was sitting in my little apartment drinking beer and everything, and I was thinking, those jamokes are sweating it out in court today, and here I am. My solution worked, right? I had this huge fear about going to jail. The fear's gone. Drinking beer, everything's cool. So I'm driving my girlfriend's car about a day or two later, and I get pulled over because there's a taillight broken. And so cop comes, gets my license, and then he comes back and he says that fateful line, if you hear it, you're going to jail, which is, will you please step out of the car? So as soon as he says that, I start bitching. Why? Why, right? Misfortune I felt I didn't deserve. Why? He says, well, you missed a court date, Mr. Hedeman, 4 days ago, and there's a bench warrant out for your arrest. So here I go to jail now. Now, I'm in jail, and they give me another court date, so now I have 2 court dates, and I'm in jail. Now, that was the solution my mind gave me to going to jail, right? Don't go to court. And what I got was, I went to jail and I had 2 more court dates. Now, that was just one incident of myself running my life. Now, if you gave that full reign for like a week, and let's say a year, guess what? That person is going to have a bottom, living a life like that. It's that simple. And that's exactly what it was. I was seeing it, my perception, my meaning I gave that court date was I may go to jail. That produced a lot of fear in me. I reacted out of my conditioning was, let's just avoid it. I avoided it. The shit hit the fan. I had to deal with it, and I was very bitter and resentful about it. And you know what? As soon as I get out of jail, I drink or use, which would create another decision out of fear, blah, blah, blah. And there I was. I didn't hit a bottom. I moved in. I put curtains on the windows. I asked you over. I got used to it because this was the only alternative I have, was my thinking and my perception, my egos. So now AA gives you an incredible solution because here you are, you've had the train wreck, right? Living on a life of fear, you're right? The train of misfortune has brought you into a wreck, right? There's your bottom. And then you get brought back to the station. And what insanely some people do is they get back on the same train of self-will. And they start living again that track, But some of us, the bottom was sufficient enough to wake us up a little bit. And then the grace was there. And then AA offers us a new solution. It says, listen, the main thing is who's going to be the conductor at the station, right? You gotta see. You can't let your ego be the conductor because it's going to direct you to the train that's going to take you to hell, either the local or express, but you're going to go, right? Now you got to listen to another one. So you come to AA and you start listening to other suggestions, right? You go to meetings, you get commitments, and what happens is you're directed to another train, and that